We've got to go do this. They've got to go do this. U.S. are concerned. We've got to go do that. They are the stenographers of power, you see. But Yugoslavia has another problem on this ideological monopoly. Its TV station is state-owned and is run by people who do not see the world the way the U.S. State Department and the U.S. National Security State does. The Yugoslav TV journalist Novenka Jovicic told me, if I pronounce her last name right, I remember, she told me when I met her in Greece, this was at a conference, she told me that she asked the U.S. ambassador, "What do you want from us?" This was last year before the bombings. And he said, "We want your television system. Give us that." The U.S. imperialists want an ideological monopoly of all the world's media. And they've got something close to that already.
Yo, welcome to L.I.O.N Podcast. Like it or not, the livest show in the O. We're ready to go. Let's introduce who's coming with me today. It's OGB.
Bonsoir, everybody.
And I'm your host, Mr. Tokes. Welcome, friends. Welcome, family. Welcome, enemies. Welcome, everybody. It's another L.I.O.N Podcast production. It's good to see you today. We have an amazing show planned. Gangsters of Capitalism, Part 2.
Dude.
And it's, as you could read the title, all you can eat propaganda. And it's definitely gonna be that kind of show. Today we have I had to actually shorten the show because there was so much going on around, like literally. I was making updates I'm like, Mike, we gotta do this, I gotta change this, I gotta change this. Putting these shows together, it's not always easy. Things are changing as you go. And you're finding ways to piece things together. But nevertheless, we're here. We got another show planned. We're going to talk some shit. We're going to get through this really quick because we have to get to the end. The end is the most critical part of this whole thing. So without further ado, how you doing, Mikey?
I'm excellent, man. Thank you for asking. Glad to be back. Excited about the show, man. Looking forward to the trip.
Oh, man. We are, guys, February 19th. We are going up to Washington, D.C. for the war rally, the anti-war, Rage Against the Machine, War Machine rally. I'm not big on that name. I mean, I get it. It's Rage Against the Machine and
Rage
shit, but
Machine, yeah.
It just sounds not peaceful, kind of, you know?
Well, a raging protest.
It sounds like it could be, all these things get infiltrated, right?
Yeah.
So you would try your best to set it up to not be like that. I mean, I guess it's going to get infiltrated anyway, but you want to kind of protect that, put some barriers up, and one just not being rage.
If it was up to me, I'd call it the Boo Boo Kitty meeting, something totally safe, non-threatening.
The don't infiltrate my shit because we're peaceful anti-war rally. I mean, but it's gonna be one of those things where there's no place you'd rather be. No place. If you were smart, there's no place you'd rather be. I get it. Lots of people can't go. Certain circumstances.
To me, it's significant because apparently it's bringing together people from all sides, left, right, middle. So that's the first of its kind that I can think of in a long time, and that's what I'm there for.
Is that the first ever? I don't know.
No, not the first ever. No, Vietnam.
Yeah, people were coming from all 60s, directions, right? That wasn't all left.
Everyone was losing sons and daughters in the war, and
that's right. That's right. Touche. You're right about that. Yeah, but it's gonna be crazy up there, and it's necessary because, like, we're literally flirting with nuclear war, which isn't war. It's just going to be annihilation. There's no such thing as even World War III, guys. With the technology that's out today, there's no. It's not going to be World War II. Was a long way ago. It is far, and we don't have the same. We're so modernized in technology that we're going to blow up the fucking world if it gets to that. It's getting to that point where there's too many powerhouses, too much drama, and I mean, I don't even want to think about that shit. But even if it's a percentage of a chance, it's too much. It's too much. We don't want any chance of that. And we don't know what's going on out there, but we do know it's not good. There's a lot of shit that's not good. So
they're just trying to sell it and package it in any way, shape, or form that they can.
Correct.
You know, China's a threat. Yeah, China's an economic threat to the oligarchs in Wall Street that are running this country. They're not a military threat. They're not threatening your freedom. They're not a threat to anything.
Right. I don't
except the rich.
Yeah. And who's the real threat, you know? I mean, well, fuck all that.
It's all propaganda, Corey.
It's all propaganda. All right. Today we're doing propaganda to expose propaganda. So, as always, I read up before these shows. References of what I cover today are going to be coming from this book, Inventing Reality, Michael Parenti. It's The Politics of News Media. It's a very good book. I mean, you should get into it because we're not going to read anywhere close to what we're doing. But I'm going to cover the most important parts, which is owners, advertisers, and editors, basically. And I'm gonna read one thing out of there, and you'll understand where I'm going with that. Parenti, though, has a BA from City College of New York. He has an MA from Brown University. He has a PhD in political science from Yale. He's an academic, author, and journalist. He's one hell of a guy, too. If you've never seen his work, especially when he was younger, man, that guy was fucking going. He's kind of the one that got me really listening, open up an ear and go, oh, shit, he's not saying anything that's not right?
He's been doing this for a long time. He's way ahead of his time, and he was really a lone wolf.
Yeah.
We think we're on an island.
Yeah, exactly. He went through the dark. And yeah, he's among the top intellectuals of our time. So
great human being.
Human being. He's worth looking into. I believe he's like 89 now or 90. So you don't see him around right now, but his books are out there, and you could catch some of his earlier lectures and stuff. They're wonderful shit. Probably his greatest achievement is not getting assassinated.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You know what I mean? That's pretty amazing in itself. Inspired or not, this is not from the book. This is from an economist named Joseph Schumpeter from 1919 about ancient Rome. The policy which pretends to aspire to peace, but unerringly generates war. The policy of continual preparation for war. The policy of meddlesome interventionism. There was no corner of the known world where some interest was not alleged to be in danger or under attack. If the interest was not Roman, they were those of Rome's allies. And if Rome had no allies, then allies would be invented. When it was utterly impossible to contrive such an interest, why then it was the national honor that had been insulted. The fight was always invested with an aura of legality. Rome was always being attacked by evil-minded neighbors, always fighting for breathing space. The whole world was pervaded by a host of enemies, and it was manifestly Rome's duty to guard against their indubitably aggressive designs. They were enemies who only waited to fall on the Roman people. Sound familiar?
Dun, dun, dun. Surprise. Can you relate to that one?
That blew my fucking mind when I found that.
Yeah, I've been saying it for a while, man. You know, history.
You told me you read that a while ago because I remember you telling me about the enemies were invented, and because you like to reference a lot of that. Guys, that's the fucking blueprint right there. I mean, even Henry Kissinger said, America doesn't have any friends. We have interests. And that's when you got to take the words from the devil and really listen to them. And you go, oh shit, you know, these motherfuckers are talking here, and we got to listen to them. But think about what we just listened to, right? There were so many points in that little thing I read. I got 10. It was almost the whole entire thing. A policy that aspires to peace but unerringly generates war. Ding, ding, ding. Check the box.
Check. Yeah.
2, the policy for continual preparation for war.
Check the yes box.
Check the fucking box. Bing, bing, bing. the policy of meddlesome interventionism. I mean, that shit's going on everywhere.
Where have we seen this before?
We're checking this all the time, every box. 4, there was no corner of the known world where some interest was not alleged to be in danger or under attack. Plenty of fear-mongering. Fucking check that box. If the interest was not Roman, they were those of Rome's allies. Ukraine's our ally now. We got to go fucking save them. They're not even NATO, but hey, send them weapons. Let's use them as a battering ram to weaken Russia.
And we attach those words: democracy, freedom.
Yep. We gotta help them. We're not saving Ukrainians, we're sacrificing them. And you see that shit. 6, and if Rome had no allies, then allies would be invented. Ukraine. That's when you really know. This is when you really know right here. When it was utterly impossible to contrive such an interest, why then it was the national honor that had been insulted. If you don't stand with us, well, then you're not patriotic. And you're fucking bad. And you're not American. The fight was always, this is 8 right here. The fight was always invested with an aura of legality. Gotta make it legal. Gotta, everybody in the fucking government's a lawyer or was a lawyer. That's why they use that terminology and they change it. They change everything, unprovoked and all that stuff. That's strategic. That's strategic to have that language in there. It's very, very advantageous. Rome was always being attacked by evil-minded neighbors, always fighting for breathing space. I mean, geez, man. It doesn't even get any. This is crazy right here. And 10, the whole world was pervaded by a host of enemies, and it was manifestly Rome's duty to guard against their undutifully aggressive designs. They were enemies who only waited for to fall on the Roman people. Ladies and gentlemen, the red, white, and blueprint. There you go.
Yes.
That's
America,
it.
The world's police force.
That's it. Show's over.
Protecting interest. I mean, protecting freedom throughout the world.
Yeah. Protecting interest. That's right. So, roll the music. We're out of here. No, just kidding.
Have you ever seen that movie, Wag the Dog?
Wag the
Dustin
Dog?
Hoffman, I believe, was in it.
I don't believe so.
They had to create a fake war in order to get, they created a fake war and totally did it through the media. I could be wrong, but it was to get somebody reelected. It was during a campaign or something, totally manufactured war.
It was a true story?
No.
Oh. Sounds like a good movie to watch, though.
But I'm just saying, it's pretty insightful. Just like Idiocracy, that's where we're at.
Absolutely, but you're right, though, Mike. They do take movies that are fiction, right? They're fiction, but they're real, too. They're based off real. That's what The Matrix, I think, is.
That's part of the desensitization of it.
Yeah, that's what I think The Matrix is, dude. They just saw the world and the way it works, especially the people that write scripts in Hollywood and see CIA and everybody. By the way, I don't even talk about that today, but I read a thing that the TV writers for TV,
the guild,
86% of them said that they have had their shit regularly edited, and there's another 83% of them that didn't agree with the way it was. It was crazy, and I just thought that was crazy. I mean, that's the amount of editing and oversight you have. They have more oversight going on in what we view and watch on television than they do in their fucking crazy adventurous fucking wars out there that are just doing whatever. And think about that. That's just a control mechanism. But anyway, we got a 2 for today. These are 3 quotes and are inspired or not, but they're from the same book, and you're gonna know what book it is. We got it's a 2-4 with 3 in it, so we got 3 in this one. No one can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. Cannot serve God and money. And number 2, it is easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. And lastly, you shall eat the fruit of the labor of your hands. You shall be blessed, and it should be well with you. Sounds socialist to me, folks. And that's your compass right there. That's your book. I don't even really read that book, but I had to go to it because I know that that's the root of your heart.
It's the most read book in the world.
That's right. And I know it matters to you guys. A lot of you guys. I know how religious a lot of my friends are. Guys, we're selling out to money. You can't do both. You can't serve God and serve money. You just can't. It's in that book. I didn't fucking say it. It's in there. It's in your book. It's your compass. I'm using your words that you go by. A great example is Rihanna. She was just on the halftime show. And everybody's talking about two things. Was it good or was it not? Was it a good performance or was it not? I'd rather talk about how she's a dirty, pregnant, soulless human being. Why? Because she has child slaves in India making her brand. That's how she's a billionaire. Her first single was like in 2005 or 6. I looked it up today. She's already a billionaire. Why? It's not her shitty music. It's not Pawn to Replay. That music sucks. It's fucking terrible, actually. I mean, I'm sure she has a good song out there or whatever. And this ain't hate on Rihanna Day.
Yeah. Opinions vary.
But
musical tastes vary, but yeah.
She has slaves. And you could see in the print I'm showing you right now, the headline, Rihanna Fenty Beauty brand under lens in India for using mica from mines hiring child labor. So while we talk about all this shit over here, we're getting rich.
You think she knew about that?
She has to. You don't care where your products are being made and shit. And she definitely knows because that's what this article I think is about. It was she got brought up for that place got brought up for charges like they were going after him. Yeah, so it's a real deal, man. And that was February 2021, this article. So
now she's singing at the Super Bowl.
Now she's saying, oh, by the way, there's something about that too. She said that she would never sing at the Super Bowl because of what happened to Colin Kaepernick.
Oh.
So you want to talk about hypocrisy?
Money talks.
You're using child slaves right now. Who are you really sticking up for? Or did you find out that you're using child slaves, so you might as well do the Super Bowl? It's just fucking, I might as well do the Super Bowl because everything I said before doesn't fucking matter. But guys, this is reality. This is what we're looking at. And that's the common cause for most of these billionaires. If not, yeah, you might as well just say all of them. You don't get that rich, especially in that fast. I think it takes like fucking 1,000 years to work 40 hours a week and earn $1 billion or something like that. It's probably even more than that.
That's a lot of sweat off of a lot of backs, not yours.
And a lot of death.
Yes.
You know, we're talking children. We're not talking 15, 14, 13. No, we're talking children.
7, 8.
Yeah. 5, 6, 7, 8. We're talking actual child slavery. Read that article, by the way. It's good.
Oh, but Corey, they could be they could have it worse. They could be doing something else, like being sold as sex slaves or something like that instead of, working in the sweatshop. So,
yeah,
bless Rihanna for giving that option.
Giving him a job.
Yeah.
She's a
lesser of the two
real
evils.
Entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good point. All right. The plan for today, as I said briefly earlier, is I'm just going to go over the 3 things that I think are important: the owners, the advertisers, and the editors. And then when we talk about one thing, we're out of here. It's going to be really easy, but it's going to be really fun. And the ending is really good, so make sure you at least stick around for that. By the way, thank you for everybody. I see the numbers growing, and I really, 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 really get excited when I see that shit. Because I know, like, I could tell you guys this. We're getting censored as hell. That's obvious. I'll see 50 likes go away right away. But I could tell you guys this. And I know that you guys care because you're here. But I need the other people that are not here to hear this. So that's where you come in. And you could start sharing this with them. And you could start talking to people. And you could get involved. And that's how it works. And that's where we're going with this. So... all right, so I'm going to explain this really quick. This was an important part of the book that I thought I just want to get this right off the bat. Most media studies treat the press as a self-contained institution, divorced from the capitalist system in which it operates. But the media are something more and less than that. Like so many institutions in our society, news organizations are privately owned, profit-making corporations. But while their immediate function is to make money for their owners, they play a broader ideological role for the capitalist system itself. Now, what is that broader ideological role he's referring to? He's talking about how they protect the capitalist system within the system. So the media will talk about, this crisis or that crisis or whatever. They'll make up a fucking crisis a lot of times. But capitalism itself is the crisis. Capitalism in it of itself is a self-generating crisis. We talk about this all the time. I don't have time to get into it today, but overproduction and all that stuff. You've heard me say it before. Falling rate of profit and all that. But the bottom line is psychological warfare is real. It's a real thing. And you have to be mindful of it. And that's what this show is about today. I don't have time to go into the CIA either. We're going to do our own CIA episode. So stay tuned for that. But they very much play a big role in it too. CIA are fucking all over the place. Okay. And also keep in mind, this book was written in 1990. It was the last updated in 1996. I believe it was written in the mid-1980s. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Who owns the media? Here we go. Newspapers and television networks are run like other corporations in the United States by boards of directors composed mostly of persons drawn from the moneyed stratum of society. 3/4 of the major stockholders of ABC, CBS, and NBC are banks, such as Chase Manhattan, Morgan Guaranty Trust, Bankers Trust, Citibank, and Bank of America. Representatives of more powerful New York banks sit on the boards of the major networks and greatly influence network fiduciary functions. Besides banks, the big media organizations hold interlocking directorates with giant companies that have major investments in airlines, coal and oil, insurance, telephone communications, agribusiness, automotives, defense contracts, rocket engineering, nuclear power, and nuclear weaponry. Ford Motor Company, already exercising a considerable influence on American society with its own multi-billion-dollar business, has had directors on the corporate boards of New York Times, Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, and General Electric, one of the nation's largest, most influential industrial giants, owns NBC. The boards of directors that rule CBS contains board members from ITT, IBM, Philip Morris, Dow Corning, JP Morgan, Rand, Carnegie Corporation, AT&T, Chase Manhattan, Citibank, Alcoa, Bulova, and Metropolitan Life. Seated on the board of directors of the company that owns the Washington Post are representatives IBM, well now it's Bezos, but Johnson & Johnson, Bank of New York, Bankers Trust, Heinz, General Electric, Coca-Cola. Overall, the directors of the
big
media,
ones.
The big ones. Overall, the directors of the media corporations are linked with powerful business organizations, not labor with well-established think tanks and charities, not their grassroots counterparts. With few exceptions, they lean politically to the right, being supporters of conservative viewpoints. They are drawn from a narrow, high-income segment of the population. Now, this was 30 years ago. I did a recent list. I updated it, and it was so fucking long that I'm not even going to read it. It's insane. You go through what Rupert Murdoch owns and all these people, and they basically, since the Telecommunications Act, I will read this short thing really quick because the Telecommunications Act came out in 1996. And this piece of legislation was supposedly intended to deregulate the increasingly tangled broadcast and telecommunication markets, allowing anyone to enter and compete in the industry. Whatever the intended result was, the actual outcome was the rapid consolidation of power in the hands of fewer and fewer massive corporations. And I took a quote from his book that he really likes, Howard Zinn's A People's History. And Howard said, in the 2003 edition of Howard Zinn's People's History, he said, the Telecommunications Act of 1996 enabled the handful of corporations dominating the airwaves to expand their power further. Mergers enabled tighter control of information. And that's the key, the control of information. They're trying to control the flow because thou who controls the narrative controls the fucking masses. And that really, that says it all.
Well, I just looked this up too because I'd heard something about it and I wanted to get it correct. But in 2021, Biden's tax breaks for local media in an effort to turn them into versions of leftists. Tax break allows eligible local media organizations to take a credit of up to $25,000 per journalist they employ. So the government basically just bought local media.
Yeah.
And the ones that were under the radar.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but
no. This sounds logical, guys. It's game, set, match. That's what they're doing. They're consolidating this shit to the point where we don't have a fucking chance anymore. Look at what they're doing to our rally right now. They're smearing it. They're calling us all racist and shit because they fear that shit. They fear the fact of what you said when you first started. You said, I'm excited about fucking everybody coming together. It's a beautiful thing, man. Hasn't happened in a really long time, and there couldn't be a bigger purpose. That scares the establishment the fucking most because that's their kryptonite. Holy shit, all these fucking people are actually talking to each other and caring.
And we're going to show you the diversity that's there. We're going to have it documented.
Oh yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of good shit when we're there. It's going to be cool, and we're going to have someone come back and edit up and show you guys all the goodness. It's gonna be fun.
Be cold.
Yeah, and if anybody's going up there, I'd love to know. So if anybody that I haven't talked to already, let me know.
Hey, if you're interested, we're heading out Friday.
Yeah, we're heading up. So
I think we have room for two more.
Yeah, we got room. We'll find fucking room. If you're going to that,
we'll make room.
If that's real.
Need to upgrade. Get the van.
Need to upgrade. So I'm going to skip over all the new things that are owned. Rupert Murdoch's could take up 5 minutes alone, just saying FXGQ, Wall Street Journal, and all the shit that he owns. Just know it is fucking gross. It's everything that you ever watch or touch or anything. They're controlling it. Just 5 corporations or 6, whatever. Who gives a shit? Now back to the book. This was a short part, but worthy of sharing right here. This is a good little part. Does ownership over the media translate into control over information? Or are journalists free, as they say? Journalists, I'm free. I can do whatever I want. I write whatever I want to write what they want. Reporters themselves offer contradictory testimony on this question. Some say they're free. Some say, ain't free. Some say the independent agents, while others complain of control and censorship. Yeah, I just said that. Well, to make a very long chapter short, I got a quick example for you right here. Rupert Murdoch was once asked, "You're considered to be politically conservative. To what extent do you influence the editorial posture of your newspapers?" He responded, "Considerably. The buck stops on my desk. My editors have input, but I make the final decision." Murdoch added that he thought of himself not as a mere conservative, but a radical conservative.
Ooh.
I mean, it's pretty fucking bold, right? That's crazy. And that's not like saying a radical lefty either, because it's not what they say it is. Radical conservative, that's really right. that's
straight up fuck the poor.
That's fascism as fuck and proud racist shit and all that shit, man. It's way out there. Otis Chandler, publisher of the Los Angeles Times, readily admitted that there existed an ideological selection process. Quote, "I'm the chief executive. I set policy, and I'm not going to surround myself with people who disagree with me. In general areas of conservatism versus liberalism, I surround myself with people who generally see the way I do."
Confirmation bias.
Yeah, absolutely.
Live.
Yeah, I mean, he's just telling you. He's just fucking telling you. I'm not going to do that shit. Yeah. Yep, so no influence whatsoever. So yes, influence does translate to control of information, and that shit is real. So owners have opinions. Who would have guessed? You know, That's why you shouldn't be owning airwaves. That's the whole purpose of this. They're supposed to be our airwaves, just like I believe, the social media should be. It's a place where we put our ideas. I don't think people should be telling us what we can and cannot post on a private platform. It kind of takes away it's the new public square. It's where we talk. It's where we communicate. It's like somebody coming on your telephone. Remember when you had a telephone? I call you. I'm like, hey, Mike, what you doing today, man? We going to fucking movies. And that's it, man. We didn't even have cell phones. So if you didn't pick up the phone,
you missed it.
You was missing it. But the way they handle things today, it'd be like if they just tapped in on our call and said, hey, man, you can't say that to your friend. I'm going to have to cancel this call now. Click. And you're like, what? Wait, motherfucker, I didn't even know you was listening. That's how I see it.
Well, I mean, people have been put on trial for their thoughts for a long time now. Now you can just be put on trial for what you say to anybody.
And that is a reality that I never knew. I never fucking knew that. And here I am, I think, yeah, it's crazy. So, advertisers. Owners themselves must have a care not to offend the large financial interests, especially those big corporate advertisers. The notion that media are manipulated by big moneyed interests is dismissed by some as a conspiracy theory. But there is nothing conspiratorial about it because they pay the bills. Advertisers regard their influence over media content as something of a right. And media executives seem to agree. As erstwhile CBS President Frank Stanton said, quote, since we are advertiser supported, we must take into account the general objective and desires of advertisers as a whole. There you go. He who pays the bills gets the shills, and that's the way it is. So speaking of conspiracy
it's their
theory,
house, their rules.
Yeah, I told Mike this before the show started, but speaking of conspiracy theory, I found this in the book Dirty Truths. The term conspiracy theory did not exist as a phrase in everyday America conversations before 1964. In 1964, and this was out of another book. It was in the book, but it was from another book. And I'll tell you the book in a second. In 1964, the year the Warren Commission issued its report, the New York Times published 5 stories in which conspiracy theory appeared. That's from the book Conspiracy Theory in America by Lance DeHaven Smith. But it was also in Dirty Truths, and I thought that was fucking interesting. How many times do you think it's been used since then? Woo!
There's been movies made with that title.
Yeah.
They Hollywoodized it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then not just printed, how many times said and printed? To give you an idea of what that does when you print and how it triggers people to repeat. All we're doing is living our life, right? We're living our life, man. And most of us are innocent fucking people just trying to figure out what the fuck is going on, man. And then when you look at some bullshit, you believe that shit. You think about a balloon over your head like, holy shit, China's dropping coronavirus on us.
And from 15 miles up, yeah.
Instead of fucking realizing that we have actual fucking armed drones over every poor country in the world, dropping bombs on them motherfuckers. It's amazing, but it is a trick. I've watched my friend get hypnotized before. Hoagie got hypnotized. It was amazing. And that's, it took a minute to get those people like that. Why wouldn't there be incremental hypnosis where you do it little by little to slowly get them into this thing where you think, we're trapped here, man. We know nothing else. This is all we know. Yeah. Editors. All right. This chapter was fucking great too, but it was long. So I'm just going to sum it up with this one editor said when talking about editors and self-censorship. Quote, it is not what the executive boss will do or will veto, but what we expect that he will do or veto. That's his influence. Daily censorship is made unnecessary by anticipatory self-censorship. And that's how they base it. That's brilliant, right? Yeah, that's how they base their fucking editorial posture. So Now, oh yeah, it's worth mentioning this too. Parenti says in there that all these journalists say, I'm nobody's puppet. I write what he want. He said, well, you wouldn't know if you don't try to go for a run. You don't know you have a leash. So if you're just printing what they approve of, then of course you could write what you want.
You never stepped out of the box.
You never stepped out of the box, man. And that's probably the difference between the people
That's
that
why
say,
they hired you. They knew you wouldn't.
Exactly. Or kept you because they groomed you.
Yes.
And figured you adjust. You did what they would when they said, hey, man, that ain't right. And you said, oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm not going to write that no more.
You like working here, Bob?
Yeah. The real grooming is going on there and in the political spectrum. Okay, so we got a video right now. Got to let y'all watch some more shit because, you get bored otherwise. But this is, let's just watch this video real quick because this explains editors in real time today. This is going to blow your mind about Syria.
We're talking about the impact of U.S. sanctions on Syria. The U.S. has a policy of denying aid and reconstruction to Syria because the U.S. wants to punish Syria because Syria defeated the U.S. side, the al-Qaeda-dominated insurgency in the Dirty War. And so accordingly, the U.S. has imposed these sanctions that prevent Syria from rebuilding. And that's causing now a major obstacle now that Syria has just suffered this devastating earthquake. Now, the U.S. has announced some exemptions on those sanctions, but we'll see whether those exemptions actually have any teeth. But meanwhile, all this makes it pretty awkward for a U.S. media that tries very hard to obscure and hide the key role of U.S. sanctions in hurting ordinary Syrians. So a rare admission of fact came through recently in the New York Times. This was what the Times said after the earthquake. It said this: Syria is not able to receive direct aid from many countries because of sanctions. Now, you don't often hear this in the New York Times, but this is actually true. This is a rare time when they're admitting the truth, that Syria is not able to receive direct aid from many countries because of sanctions. That's right, because sanctions explicitly block aid to Syrians. So I pointed this out afterwards. I said, the New York Times makes it plain. Syria is not able to receive direct aid from many countries because of sanctions. So unless you're a monstrous sadist, why not lift the sanctions, right? Unless you want to hurt more Syrians, why are you keeping these sanctions in place? So the Times, though, this is how the Times responded to their own report. They censored it. They changed the heading. So this, again, is the original heading, February 7th. They say Syria is not able to receive direct aid from many countries because of sanctions. Well, look at how the same article appears the next day. That sentence is now gone. And now it says, as the Syrian government tightly controls what aid it allows into opposition-held areas, border crossings with Turkey have become a lifeline.
Wow.
Yeah. So too much truth, the Times, gone in one day.
So there you go, right? It's I'm about to break shit. So there you go.
Bull in a china shop.
Yeah, bull in a china shop. My mom used to say that when I was a little kid. You like a bull in China. That just happened. They switched it right before your eyes. So that's an editor's job right there. It just pull the okie doke. And in the book, it explains, I wanted to talk about so much in this fucking book. It explains how editors don't always catch everything. So that's why you'll see something that doesn't, they do two reasons. One, they don't always catch everything. And two, they leave stuff intentional in there to get credibility, to keep it balanced, to say, oh, we're going to report on this people dumping illegally toxic waste in the fucking thing. We're going to report on these people underpaying their people. We're going to report on this, but they don't overdo it. And I kind of save that. Just like they put the main thing that they want, if it's a big lie, on the front pages, the headlines, and then the retraction comes months later in the back pages.
You miss it.
Yeah, and you miss it. And they never retract their bullshit. They still say Russiagate or whatever the fuck it is. It's amazing. And then we repeat it as a result. It's unbelievable, folks, and we're living it. It's like I always knew they lied. Like, we all knew that. We knew.
Right.
But this is...
They only lie just a little to get the job done. That's kind of the way I looked at it before, you know.
Me too.
It's for the greater good. It's for my benefit they're doing this. So
right.
I don't have to worry.
Right.
They're burden, you know, they're carrying the burden.
Right.
You know. Wrong.
Yeah. Well, they never told me that Rachel Maddow made $100,000 a day. Literally. I think it's like $90,000 a day. Think about that shit. Why does Tucker Carlson and Rachel Maddow and these fucking people make so much goddamn money.
They've perfected that craft of spreading propaganda.
Yep. And is it disinformation or misinformation? Because disinformation is when it's intentionally lied to you. Misinformation is something I would do, where I'd say something wrong and then the next day or something, if I catch it, go, yo, I fucked up. My bad. That's misinformation. And you could tell because they never retract what they do. They never do it. You could see a bunch of lies on Twitter that are still up.
Or does America just think that when they're at that level that they have unlimited resources, so their credibility is unquestionable and their sources of information are unquestionable? I don't know.
Right.
I mean, how can you...
I think
this whole left-right thing, how can you believe something that one side says wholeheartedly when there's a completely opposite and equal statement on the other side that totally, I mean, I see that as both are fucking wrong, both are lies, in a way, but how can somebody go all in on something that has a complete opposite like that, I mean, without investigating?
Because somewhere along the line you transition from thinking to feeling.
Or they think that's the only choices they have in life. They don't want to put in the extra thought, the work.
They don't know it's out there. A limited brain would not even know. I didn't think I was capable of fucking knowing. I just didn't believe in myself in an intellectual sense. Yeah, I didn't. And then I realized, holy shit, just little by little, I was like, man, I'm determined, man. If I got to work twice as hard or whatever.
You have the ADD, man. It's your superpower.
That's right.
You have an advantage.
Right. That's right. But while that happened, I also realized that it's not just me. It's everybody. And that's what we got to do. We got to push the message to say, dude, we need you to understand this stuff so we can hear what your brain thinks. Because we're all different. We all have somebody out there's got a good fucking answer, and just like we find all these people and go, God damn, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Dude, there's so many of these people. How many Albert Einsteins do we waste away fucking just wherever? Because we're not developing our people. We're not developing our minds.
Exactly.
We're teaching the wrong things.
Lowest percentage of doctors per capita.
Yeah. Talk about propaganda. Talk about what they say. My mom even told me, she was like, you wouldn't want to know what they taught me in school. She's like, I'll just put it to you like that.
Even the difference between you and I.
Right.
Crazy. I mean, I was taught Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, was the fucking savior of America, West Indies.
Remember when we watched that video and it said that, and we tried it, it said if you have two people from two different standpoints, and they said if you Google the same question, based on where your perspective lies,
that's the answer you get.
That's the answer you're going to get.
My phone gives a different answer than your phone.
We did global warming.
Yeah.
And it did. It worked. It fucking sent you something different.
Yes.
And this is guys. And it was like what I told you before we were talking about social welfare. About that stat that Parenti had in Dirty Truths.
Oh, yeah.
The 30 years. He said 1996, from 30 years, he said it was like 5-point-something trillion that America said that they spent.
They're claiming to have spent
on social welfare.
5.6 trillion?
Something like that. It was like 5.5 trillion or something like that over 30 years. So he said it wasn't even a tenth of that. He said it was like, or a percent of that. He said it was 400 billion over 30 years. It's grossly exaggerated, and it's another dirty truth they tell you in order to divide a population. I can't tell you how many, because I have a lot of Republican friends. I can tell you how many of them fucking harp on social welfare. They harp on it, and there's a reason why you can't find real good statistics. There's a reason why me and Daniel were sitting here the other day, and it said something like 2,000 something billion. I'm like, what the fuck?
Not a real number.
What the fuck is that number? I don't even know what that is. But they're playing on our ignorance. And they know there's more of us that are ignorant, or I wouldn't even say ignorant. We're just not, because I don't even believe in ignorance anymore. I just believe in intellectual laziness. I believe that everybody has a brain to develop. Just like if you don't work out in the gym, you're going to get fat.
Intellectual laziness leads to ignorance.
Right.
The lack of knowledge.
Correct. Good point. But it's just like not working out in the gym. If you don't work out, you're not going to get muscles. If you don't read books, your brain's not going to get smart. It's fucking the same thing. And again, I don't need you just to know the book. Roger Waters was on TV the other day, and he gave a speech. It was fucking amazing, this one thing that he said. I already told you this, but it's worth repeating. He said his mom, when he got in trouble, I think he said he was 13, he got in trouble, and he said his mom told him, well, you get in trouble now, and you're going to get in trouble later. You're going to come across troubles. And when you do, understand this. I got advice for you. When you come across something and you truly care about it and you want to solve the problem, you look at it from every angle possible, every which way, every perspective. You break it down. You analyze it as much as you can and more. And then the rest is easy. He said, the rest is easy. Yeah, you just do the right thing. But if you don't know, you can't grow. And that's where we're at right now.
Well, nowadays, doing the right thing means doing what's right for the money man, doing what's right for my bank account.
Yeah. You know why?
Doing what's right for me. We're a bunch of individuals. It's like going from Neolithic to Paleolithic, going in reverse.
Right.
You know.
Well, they teach it in business. They teach it in economics. They teach it in church. We've
got people marrying themselves legally. You seen this?
No.
Yeah, marrying themselves.
Is that happening?
Yes.
But this that's a good one. If I could just throw out there.
Look, sorry.
This is what's happening. The people are marrying themselves.
Sorry, went in a rabbit hole there.
No, it's fucking good. It's fun. It was a good way to fucking make that point. So we got a lot going on, and I lost my place now and everything, but it's something to think about, and that's why today's so important. It's about propaganda, and today, what I was saying before was like, today it's different, man. And I think it's a part of the late stage capitalism. The later the stage, how they have to redefine recession, shit like that. I mean, come on, man. This is bananas.
Yeah, and inflation, yeah.
Yeah. You're selling us democracy on inflation and suppressing wages. That's what you're doing. And you're saying this is democracy.
They're no longer just rewriting laws. They're redefining words.
Yeah.
Language.
Yeah. Because the system is failing so bad, and it's getting to the point where it's total collapse, where they have to ramp that shit up, man. Or people are going to fucking start catching on and going, wait a minute, man. The fuck? You said this was democracy.
Well, their panic button is the call to war. Just remember that.
Yeah.
When they drum up the call to war, that's the last desperate act of a failing system.
I think it's what we don't see. I agree with that. But I think it's what we don't see is the bad thing. We need to learn how to feel without actually seeing. Reading a statistic that Madeleine Albright on fucking 60 Minutes, when asked, is it worth 500,000 Iraqi kids under 5 years old dying for our sanctions? And she said, I think it's a price we're ready to pay. Bitch, you're not paying the price. That's the shit that goes right over our heads. And we should just be standing in the middle of the road till somebody answers why the fuck we're willing to starve 500,000 kids. Our drone strikes in Afghanistan, our airstrikes killed 40% children. Of all the fucking people we killed, it was 40% children. So does their babies not count because they're brown? Our babies are special, so they get to count? No. It's like I said in the last thing. We all won the womb Olympics, dude. So we're not blessed because we're Americans. We're just lucky. We're all blessed to be here. They're blessed too, but they're under bombs, and they need us. They need us to speak up. They need us to fucking do something because we're in the heart of it. This is the imperial fucking core right here. All right, on to the book. Even sports and weather. This is interesting, okay? Even sports and weather, folks, okay? Because I was going to do wars and shit, but we talk wars. We talk plenty of fucking wars. Even sports and weather. I've got something to say after this in a video, too. So this part of the book is called The Big Sell. Not only news and advertising, but even such seemingly neutral components of the media as sports and weather are part of the big sell. Elsewhere, I have shown how media sports coverage is permeated with political bias. Suffice it to say here that whether it is a network coverage of the Olympics or the hoopla that surrounds football games and professional wrestling, media sports propagate the virtues of nation-state chauvinism and militarism. We might recall how the Gulf War in 1991 was used as an occasion to inject militaristic hype into media sporting events. That's how you say it. I couldn't say it earlier. I didn't know what the fucking I said all those words at different fucking spots.
You did it well.
Thank you. I tried. Mike watches me fail sometimes and just approves. He's like, that's okay.
With his tongue twisting.
The televised NFL Conference Championship game between the Buffalo Bills and the LA Raiders began with Army, Navy, Marine, and Air Force personnel in parade dress uniform, carrying flags down the field as the crowd beckoned and yellow ribbons chanted, USA, USA. The 1991 Super Bowl football game on ABC seemed like a feature-length promo for the war, replete with a gigantic patriotic pageant, a stadium crowd waving flags and singing patriotic songs, and a taped appearance by President and Mrs. Bush. At halftime, Peter Jennings came on with an upbeat update on the destruction of Iraq. In UCLA, Arizona basketball games, February 11th, 1991, both teams had American flags sewn on their uniforms, as the announcer pointed out, in support of our efforts in the Gulf. So did just about every other basketball team in the country. The National Football League, in a joint venture with the Department of Defense, even saw fit to sponsor a 60-minute documentary on Operational Desert Storm. Steve Sable, president of NFL Films, put it this way: I don't want to say that the war is the same as football, but the military likes the way we've mythologized pro football. The same spirit and ideology that football glorifies and inspires: discipline, devotion, commitment to a cause, unselfishness, leadership, is also the spirit necessary for the successful military endeavor. You heard references to football throughout the war. President Bush even called it his Super Bowl. Yeah, so it's indoctrination, but it's slow motion. And you don't really see that shit, because I didn't. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, I cried when Obama got in office, and I cry at football games when they begin. There's some times where it's just so emotional. Not now, but I'm talking about like when I yeah, man. We, especially when I'm friends and drunk and shit, we're just like, yeah, man, fuck yeah, dude. It's that herd mentality thing, and you're like, yeah, dude, we feel like we're with you, and we are, because we're USA, right? And it's easy. It's easy to get you when you sell it right. And where we're going in a second, stay with me, because that video is going to blow your mind. Indeed, military personnel made the Gulf War sound more like a football game than a one-sided mass slaughter. To offer a few of many examples, on January 17, 1991, a high-ranking officer observed on NBC, quote, our team has carried out this game plan beautifully. A few days later on CBS, interviewed a pilot who said, we had our first game. It worked great. We scored a touchdown. When the ground war began, one infantryman exclaimed, it's kickoff time. A U.S. general explained the war's outcome. You had a high school team playing the Super Bowl against the New York Giants, and they got their ass whipped. So
I'll add to that.
Go ahead.
As you know, I had boots on the ground during that time, and when we reached certain objectives, we had brevity codes, code words for those objectives, and we used kickoff, first down, touchdown, field goal, Super Bowl champions.
So it came both ways.
It was, yeah. We were using those codes I mean, we were feeling it.
Because
They
they're
sold it to
embracing
us.
We
were playing football, but yeah, bullets were whizzing.
I'd go to Magic games all the time, and it would always be military people getting at halftime and the beginning and all this stuff. And
when I see shit like that, it makes me sick. I have to say, I just want to put that out there.
But I never knew.
I fucking hate that Lee Greenwood song. I hate all that shit, the pageantry,
But I was cheering, and like I would have my hot dog and everything. I'm like, shit, I gotta stand up. This is very important. This is very important. And it is because their lives are very important. But that's exactly why we don't want you to go to fucking war. That's the reason we want to stop this shit. That's the reason we're studying other countries to make sure, do we really have to do this?
Well, that's so the people don't be like, hey man, this war's gone on long enough. We need to get the fuck everybody home now. That's why they keep that shit going. Dude.
Right.
Keep you distracted from that.
And that's why they fucking, yeah, man. And it's so obvious. God damn, I beg you, if the people that don't pay attention, just please pay attention. You'll see it. You'll see it. I'll sit back and I'll just say, welcome, man. Welcome. It's fucking hard over here. But it's there, dude. Okay. It's there.
Yeah.
My code kicked me out. Pat Tillman. We're going to talk about him for a second. Now I'm going to show you a video that's very important. But our military, this is important because of what we just talked about, right? 2 reasons. The Super Bowl had a thing on with Pat Tillman recently. And I don't know if you caught it. They usually do this too. I've seen it. But still seeing it is different because I know the backstory of it. And if you don't know the backstory, our military and high-ranking officials basically covered up his death. And they made it, at first, I think it was initially, they said it was the Taliban. They just said it was the Taliban to the mom. That was the first thing, done deal. And they even had a Navy SEAL at the funeral reading words that said, basically, he died fighting for his country, and they gave him the medal. The
Medal of Honor.
Yeah, dude, and his own brother said in there that that's what took the most courage, man. Is he that's his older brother, man. So he stood up and said, "You guys gave him a medal, and he didn't even earn it, and you guys, and he's like he wouldn't want a lie, man. He wouldn't want this. He wouldn't want to live a lie." So anyway, so there's a lot that happened, and the video that I'm going to show is going to explain it all, so don't worry about that. It's lengthy, and I apologize in advance, but on the Tillman special, on the thing, and oh yeah, the other reason was because the injecting militaristic hype into sporting events was the other reason I wanted to say this. But on the Tillman special, it said, Pat Tillman says, quote, "I've always had a great deal of respect for the flag. Times like this," and they showed the Trade Center coming down behind it because he got in because of the Trade Center, and he was playing football for the Arizona Cardinals, and so he was inspired. He saw that shit and he was like, dude, I gotta. So he said, I've always had a great deal of respect for the flag. Times like this, you stop and think about not only how good we have it, but what kind of system we live under. More freedoms were allowed, and that wasn't built overnight. My great-grandfather was in Pearl Harbor, and a lot of family has given up and gone and fought in wars, and I really haven't done a damn thing as far as laying myself on the line. So I have a great deal of respect for these who have and for the flag, for what the flag stands for. I fucking love Pat Tillman, dude, and I hate the way people do him, man. He just had a heart of gold, man. He was out there doing it. But without further ado, let's check out this video. And again, I'm sorry for the length, but it's worth it.
You're recognized. I want to thank Chairman Waxman for holding this hearing and members of the committee for attending. My name is Ken Tillman. 2 days ago marked the 3rd anniversary of the death of my older brother, Pat Tillman, Spear, Afghanistan. To our family and friends, it was a devastating loss. To the nation, it was a moment of disorientation. To the military, it was a nightmare. But to others within the government, it appears to have been an opportunity. April of 2004 was turning into the deadliest month to date in the war in Iraq. The dual rebellions in Najaf and Fallujah handed the U.S. forces their first tactical defeat, as American commanders essentially surrendered Fallujah to members of Iraq resistance, and the administration was forced to accede to Ayatollah Sistani's demand for January elections in exchange for assistance in extricating U.S. forces from its battle with the Mahdi militia. A call-up of 20,000 additional troops was ordered, and another 20,000 troops had their tours of duty extended. In the midst of this, the White House learned that Christian Parente, Seymour Hersh, and other journalists were about to reveal a shocking scandal involving massive and systemic detainee abuse in a facility known as Abu Ghraib. Then on April 22nd, 2004, my brother Pat was killed in a firefight in eastern Afghanistan. Immediately after Pat's death, our family was told that he was shot in the head by the enemy in a fierce firefight outside a narrow canyon. In the days leading up to Pat's memorial service, media accounts based on information provided by the Army and the White House were wreathed in a patriotic glow and became more dramatic in tone. A terrible tragedy that might have further undermined support for the war in Iraq was transformed into an inspirational message that served instead to support the nation's foreign policy wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. To further exceed Pat's death, he was awarded the Silver Star for Valor. The abridged version went like this: only after his team engaged this well-armed enemy did it appear that the enemy's volume of fire into the kill zone diminished. Above the din of battle, Corporal Tillman was heard issuing fire commands to take the fight to an enemy on the dominating high ground. Always leading from the front, Corporal Tillman aggressively maneuvered his team against the enemy position on the steep slope. As a result of Corporal Tillman's effort and heroic action, the trail element of the platoon was able to maneuver through the ambush position of relative safety without suffering a single casualty. The fight that ensued at Corporal Tillman's position increased in intensity. Corporal Tillman focused all his efforts on keeping the men of his team safe while continuing to press the attack himself without regard for his own personal safety. In the face of mortal danger, Corporal Tillman illustrated that he would not fail his comrades. His actions are in keeping with the highest standards of the United States Army. This was a narrative that inspired countless Americans as intended. There was one small problem with the narrative, however. It was utter fiction. The content of the multiple investigations reveal a series of contradictions that strongly suggest deliberate and careful misrepresentations. We appeal to this committee because we believe this narrative was intended to deceive the family, but more importantly, to deceive the American public. Pat's death was clearly the result of fratricide. It was due to a series of careless actions by several individuals in our own platoon after a small harassing ambush. During this uncontrolled shooting, the driver of the vehicle himself recognized friendlies immediately, but kept driving for approximately 400 meters, while the soldiers in the back of his truck continued to shoot at the hillside where the U.S. soldiers were and civilians. The vehicle saw arms and hands waving, smoke was flying, pin gun flares. An Afghan soldier was immediately recognized. They never felt threatened, and they still shot up the village unprovoked. The vehicle behind them clearly saw the U.S. soldiers on the hillside and were calling ceasefire. The end results were the death of Pat and the Afghan soldier, as well as 2 more soldiers wounded in the village. The signs were available, but the decision to shoot was made. This was not some fog of war. They simply lost control. According to the sworn statement on April 26th by the fellow soldier who was right next to Pat, literally right next to Pat. Thank you, sir. Quote, I remember watching the friendlies just shooting at us. A 50 cal rolled up into our sights and started to unload on top of us. They would work in bursts, 50 cal for 10 to 15 seconds, 240 Bravo, 10 to 15 seconds, back and forth. Specialist Tillman and I were yelling, "Cease, stop, stop, friendlies, friendlies, cease fire." But they could not hear us. Tillman came up with the idea to let a smoke grenade go. This stopped the friendly contact for a few moments, and that's when I realized the AMF soldier was dead. At this time, the GMV rolled into a better position to fire on us. We thought the battle was over, though, so we were relieved, getting up, stretching out, and talking with one another. When I heard some 5.5 sounds coming from the GMV, they started firing again. That's when I hit the deck. Specialist Tillman at this time was hit by small arms fire. I know this because I could hear the pain in his voice as he called out, "Ceasefire, friendlies, I am Pat effing Tillman, damn it." He said this over and over again until he stopped, end quote. The facts of this case clearly show Pat and the Afghan soldier were killed by fellow members of his platoon, as well as the wounded soldiers on the hillside, and they knew this immediately. Revealing that Pat's death was a fratricide would have been yet another political disaster during a month already swollen with political disasters, and a brutal truth that the American public would undoubtedly find unacceptable. So the facts needed to be suppressed. An alternative narrative had to be constructed. Crucial evidence was destroyed, including Pat's uniform, equipment, and notebook. The autopsy was not done in accordance to regulation, and the field hospital report was falsified. An initial investigation completed with 8 to 10 days before testimony could be changed or manipulated, and which hit disturbingly close to the mark, disappeared into thin air, and was conveniently replaced by another investigation with more palatable findings. This freshly manufactured narrative was then distributed to the American public, and we believe the strategy had the intended effect. It shifted the focus from the grotesque torture at Abu Ghraib and a downward spiral of an illegal act of aggression to a great American who died a hero's death. Over a month after Pat's death, when it became clear that it would no longer be possible to pull off this deception, a few of the facts were sold out to the public and to our General Kinzinger was ordered to tell the American public May 29th, 5 weeks later, that Pat died of fratricide, but with a calculated and nefarious twist. He stated, quote, there was no one specific finding of fault, end quote, and that he, quote, probably died of fratricide, end quote, but there was specific fault, and there was nothing probable about the facts that led to Pat's death. The most despicable part of what General Kinzinger told the American public was when he said, quote, the results of this investigation in no way diminish the bravery and sacrifice displayed by Corporal Tillman, end quote. This is an egregious attempt to manipulate the public into thinking that anyone who would question this 180-degree flip in the narrative would be casting doubt on Pat's bravery and sacrifice. Such questioning says nothing about Pat's bravery and sacrifice, any more than the narrative for Jessica diminishes her bravery and sacrifice. It does, however, say a lot about the powers who perpetrated this. After the truth of Pat's death was partially revealed, Pat was no longer of use as a sales asset and became strictly the Army's problem. They were now left with the task of briefing our family and answering our questions. With any luck, our family would sink quietly into our grief, and the whole unsavory episode would be swept under the rug. However, they miscalculated our family's reaction. Through the amazing strength and perseverance of my mother, the most amazing woman on earth, our family had managed to have multiple investigations conducted. However, while each investigation gathered more information, the mountain of evidence was never used to arrive at an honest or even sensible conclusion. The most recent investigation by the Department of Defense Inspector General and the Criminal Investigative Division of the Army concluded that the killing of Pat was, quote, an accident. The handling of the situation after the firefight were described as a compilation of, quote, missteps, inaccuracies, and errors in judgment, which created the perception of concealment. The soldier who shot Pat admitted in his sworn statement that just before he delivered the fatal burst from about 35 meters away, that he saw his target waving hands, but he decided to pull the trigger anyway. Such an act is not an accident. It's a clear violation of the rules of engagement. Writing up a field hospital report stating that Pat was, quote, transferred to intensive care unit for continued CPR after most of his head had been taken off by multiple 5.56 rounds is not misleading. Stating that a giant rectangle bruise covering his chest that sits exactly where the armor plate that protects you from bullets is being, quote, consistent with paddle marks is not misleading. These are deliberate and calculated lies. Writing a Silver Star Award before a single eyewitness account is taken is not a misstep. Falsifying soldier witness statements for a Silver Star is not a misstep. These are intentional falsehoods that meet the legal definition for fraud. Delivering false information at a nationally televised memorial service is not an error in judgment. Discarding an investigation that does not fit a preordained conclusion is not an error in judgment. These are deliberate acts of deceit. This is not the perception of this is concealment. That is, of course, not the only soldier where battlefield realities reach the family and the public in the form of a false narrative. First Lieutenant Ken Ballard died in Najaf, Iraq, just one day after Pat's fratricide went public. His mom, Karen Meredith, was told that Ken was killed by a sniper on a rooftop. 15 months later, she found out that he was killed by an unmanned gun from his own vehicle. First Lieutenant Private Jesse Booty was killed May 5th, 2004 in Iraq. His family was told he was killed in a vehicle accident. A year later, they received the autopsy report, and they found that he was shot in the back. The Army was forced to concede that he was accidentally shot by a Polish soldier. Just recently, out of nowhere, a lieutenant showed up at their family's house and told them that an officer in his own unit had shot him. They are still looking for answers. Sergeant Patrick McCafferty was killed June 22nd, 2004, from what the family was told as, quote, an ambush by insurgents. 2 years later, they found out that those, quote, insurgents happened to be the same Iraqi troops that he was training. Before his death, he told his chain of command that these same troops that he was training were trying to kill him and his team. He was told to keep his mouth shut. About a year ago, I received a phone call. I was at my mom's house, and it was an emergency breakthrough from the operator. It happened to be a woman named Dawn Hellerman from North Carolina. So it was 2 o'clock in the morning her time. Her husband, Staff Sergeant Brian Hellerman, was killed in Iraq. She was tired of receiving new official reasons why her husband had died. She was desperate for help, so she called. The system killed her. Those soldiers deserve better, and their families deserve better. Our family has relentlessly pursued the truth on this matter for 3 years. We have now concluded that our efforts are being actively thwarted by powers that are more interested in protecting a narrative than getting at the truth or seeing that justice is served. That is why we ask Congress, as a sovereign representative of the whole people, to exercise its power to investigate the inconsistencies in Pat's death and the aftermath, and into all the other soldiers that were betrayed by this system. The one bit of truth that did survive these manipulations was that Pat was and still is a great man. He is the most wonderful older brother to ever exist. Pat wanted to leave a positive legacy based on his actions, and he did that. But Pat's death at the hands of his comrades is a terrible tragedy. But the fact that the Army and what appears to be others attempted to hijack his virtue and his legacy is simply horrific. The least this country can do for him in return is to uncover who is responsible for his death, who lied and covered it up, and who instigated those lies and benefited from them. Then ensure that justice is meted out to the culpable. Pat and these other soldiers volunteered to put their lives on the line for this country.
Like I said, that's courage. Did you see the facial expressions around say it all? Like, one guy had a smug look on his face. The other guys looked like how you should look and are very like, you know, you should look like that. You should look like you're about to vomit listening to what he's saying. And then he had the backup testimonies of the other people right behind it. He just said, yeah, and this one, the same thing. And he even knew those people. So much so that he had to open himself up and start taking people in. Man, look, dude, you going through it too? Come on. You going through it too? Come on. Because he had the popularity. He had the platform. By the way, celebrities, real celebrities, he had the platform. So he used it. He used his brother's platform to bring other people in there to get their voices amplified. And that's important. That's a part of it. I just think he's so courageous, man. And then I read about, I can't remember, I was looking for the story, but I remember, I think we did it on a fucking podcast a long time ago before we even went video, about his little brother and how he was getting treated after they were lying to him about it. They didn't tell him the truth. Even a guy knew that happened. He was friends with him and they told him not to tell him. And then they put him on like a different duty because he wanted to go or something. And I could have sworn like they put him on like pots and pans or some shit and had him doing fucked up shit. And I can't remember, so I don't want to say anything, but I'm going to find that. And go. He didn't talk about it and I couldn't, everything about it was recent, this thing, the Super Bowl. But not just lies. He said deliberate and calculated lies. He said not just lies, deliberate and calculated lies. And he looked him right in his eyes and said that shit. Oh, man. That dude's got Pat Tillman's mom said, this is important before we move on, in a Sports Illustrated article, quote, they attached themselves to his virtue and then throw him under the bus. They had no regard for him as a person. He'd hate to be used as a lie. I don't care if they put a bullet in my head in the middle of the night. I'm not stopping. No regard for him as a person. That's his mama.
Because they weren't shortfalls, they weren't missteps, and they weren't errors. They were deliberate attempts to cover up what happened in order for them to use Pat's death for propaganda purposes at a time during the war in 2004 when, Abu Ghraib prison scandal was breaking, Fallujah, was falling apart. I mean, it was a terrible time for the military and for that administration. And Pat's death was an opportunity for them. In fact, there's a line it's in the book. It was in the documents that we were given. One of the investigative generals asked someone in the chain of command who was clearly, at a higher rank than the investigative officer, because he kept calling him sir, and the name was redacted. But the general said, well, what was the kind of the atmosphere when Pat was killed? And he said, well, it was like, here's the steak dinner, but we're giving it to you on a garbage can cover. You got it. You work it. So in other words, they thought Pat's death was a positive thing for them because they could use it for propaganda. Yeah. Unfortunately, it was a fratricide, so they had to spin it.
Why, though, Patrick, isn't this statement enough to say, okay, he was killed by friendly fire. They made some mistakes. Some people did it. They're fully admitting it now. What do you want?
Well,
more?
It's not mistakes of a few. It was choreographed, and to this day, they have not put sufficient facts on the table for me to know what happened to my son. I have evidence that will show that this may not have been simply a friendly fire incident.
Well, what else could it have been?
Well, I don't like jumping over a falsified homicide investigation and then guessing at what happened to my son.
You think someone might have, on his own side, deliberately killed him?
I haven't eliminated it. There is strong evidence of 2 shooters, not one. There's a lot of other evidence in there that would take quite a while to go through. But the big deal here is this is not a few mistakes that were made, or as they say, the mistakes of a few. This was a choreographed event, and you just read the P4, including General McChrystal. Well, when you jump over a homicide investigation that's been falsified, and then you want to debate what happened to my son, I find that difficult. They don't mind doing it because they just want to say, well, this was friendly fire, this was an accident. But the scenario that they painted for us several times is just ridiculous. And it is still their scenario. It's still plainly an accident.
Pat was killed on April 22nd. On Memorial Day weekend, we were notified that he was actually killed by friendly fire. And as we were informed by a colonel that came to our home, and he gave us a scenario of what happened. And then a week later, we went up to Washington, to Fort Lewis, to get an official briefing on what happened. And in a week's time, a lot of the facts changed. And the facts sounded very suspicious, and the family was, very unsatisfied. And in a period of a few months, we started getting autopsies, field hospital reports. Things just didn't add up. And we started questioning everything. And we started pushing to have, further investigations. And with each investigation, we were just faced with more questions. One of the reasons they had to tell us is because the medical examiner was suspicious right away. He was informed that Pat was killed in an ambush by the enemy. And when he saw Pat's wounds, he knew that an AK-47 could not cause wounds like that. And so and he asked that there be a criminal investigation. And the adjutant general said, no, we're satisfied with the information we have, and she refused to push for a criminal investigation. So that is one of the main reasons they were forced to tell us.
That's how many times they changed the fucking story. And still to today, they're using his face and promoting war. Super Bowl Sunday. Guys, we're living in a false reality, man. When you really look at it, you got to go, what am I supporting? Why am I wasting so much time here?
The military are masters of that. They've been lying about friendly fire deaths since the beginning.
Yeah. And
Pat represents thousands of others.
Yeah. That guy that got shot and he wasn't even arming his weapon, and they said that he got hit by a sniper. The lady, all those stories. They're changing it because they know it's wrong. They know it's wrong, and they know
they got to keep war glorified.
And it's not inevitable. It's not inevitable, especially what we're doing, guys. That's the whole point of this. We are fucking up. All right, something else interesting. Kevin Tillman said in that video just now, he said, quote, a terrible tragedy that would have further undermined support for the war in Iraq was transformed into an inspirational message that served instead to support the nation's foreign policy wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's what we just said. And that's what he says in the book about framing. He goes through a thing about framing and how to do all this shit. A book explains it all 10 times the fucking every way, 10 times for every subject. He really is a scientist, man. He's a mind. And this is the last thing. Kevin also said it shifted attention because Seymour Hersh, who we're about to talk about in a second, Seymour Hersh is a journalist, which is an amazing journalist, but he wrote a thing on exposing Abu Ghraib when it happened, and that was it was around the same fucking time. So that shit was coming on where the torture program and all that stuff was coming out. So Kevin Tillman saying that they promoted Pat hardcore pushing this to offset that, to quiet that down. And to rally the cause for the war, because, that always makes more noise. People are going to be more patriotic than they are going to be criticize their country.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me. So Abu Ghraib was a fucking terrible thing. We don't have time to get into that, but he also talks about in the book about opinion visibility and the power of opinion visibility. Whether we'll show your opinion a lot, or we'll show it once and bye-bye. You know, and then we'll even talk shit about it when we show it once. You know, it's all how you frame it. So yeah, so they made it about Pat, or it's not about Pat. It's about what they did to Pat, and that's and why they did that to Pat. That's what that's about. So, all right, Nord Stream attack revealed, folks. First thing I want to say is, I told you so.
I told you.
You know, fucking Mike said, "No, man, you need to take a victory lap one of these times, man, because it made my heart warm. I'm not gonna lie, it did feel good. But then it instantly came to me. It's like, well, I don't want to be right about
You're
this
tired
shit.
of being right.
Yeah,
Shit.
yeah. I wish I was wrong about this shit. I wish there was actually all this not going on, and somebody could show me something that I was missing. But that remains not the case. All right. So, but this is serious. We have to take this serious here. Let's look at this short video real quick. It's by the Gray Zone, and then we'll talk about it.
Cy Hirsch, one of the most impactful journalists of all time, came out with a story this week on how the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipelines. And he got the inside story from a source and lays out in great detail how it went down. And the planning for this began, he says, in late 2021. And the timing there is interesting because, yes, that is when Russian troops were massing on Ukraine's border. But December 2021 is also when Russia put proposals to the U.S., these extensive draft treaties, to try to address Russia's security concerns about NATO expansion. And rather than address those concerns and try to negotiate, the U.S. instead started planning for a proxy war, or continued planning for a proxy war. And among those plans was turning to blowing up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And why do they want to blow up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline? Well, as Cy Hirsch points out, the U.S. has long recognized that if the Nord Stream 2 pipeline goes online, that would then bring more cheap energy from Russia to Germany. And that would make it a lot more difficult to wage a proxy war in Russia against Russia and Ukraine, because to do that, you need Germany on board, because Germany is the sort of financial center of Europe. And if it's not on board, then a proxy war will be impossible. And if Germany is receiving even more cheap energy from Russia, then Germany is not going to be wanting to cut that off and alienate its source of cheap energy. So the U.S. found the solution, which was to blow it up. And Cy Hirsch goes through the details of how it went down, and he asserts that the U.S.
Well, before let's get into the details, but before we do, I just wanted to make one additional point, which is that the threat to U.S. empire is much greater than German non-cooperation in the Ukraine proxy war. There has been a historic effort, post-war effort, led most notably by former West German Chancellor Willy Brandt, to bring Russian energy and resources and German technological know-how together to forge a more independent European power center, to make Western Europe more independent from the U.S. And NATO exists as a obstacle overtly and expressly to prevent Europe from being more independent from the U.S. As Cy Hirsch points out, that's why Jens Stoltenberg, who has been sort of a U.S. asset since the Vietnam era, according to Cy, has been chosen as Secretary General, and he's the former Norwegian Prime Minister who's fully on board with the U.S. Cy claims this attack was carried out from Norway, but the point is, the U.S. does not want a more independent Germany, and Nord Stream was a pipeline to European independence. So let's talk about the details here.
Yeah, and we played that clip before on a recent stream of Stratfor founder George Friedman, where he said that the primordial U.S. interest is severing the relationship between Germany and Russia, because them cooperating would be a threat to U.S. hegemony. And so blowing up this huge infrastructure project is a part of that. And so I'm really glad you pointed out this is not just a part of the Ukraine proxy war. It's even bigger. It's even bigger to U.S. geostrategic aims. So in terms of what Hirsch reveals, his article says that the operation to plant the explosives was done under the cover of a NATO exercise in June 2022, which many people speculated about at the time. After Nord Stream was bombed, people pointed out that there was this exercise going on nearby. And Hirsch says that that was used as a cover for these U.S. Navy divers to plunge and plant the explosives. And then a few months later, in September of 2022, a surveillance plane was sent and then dropped basically something in the water that set off a remote triggered explosion. And 3 of the 4 bombs went off. The 4th one didn't.
I'm sure you're aware of the new report from Seymour Hersh, how America took out the Nord Stream pipeline and the White House's denial of any involvement. Given the longstanding U.S. opposition to the pipeline, Secretary Blinken's calling its demise a tremendous opportunity, and Undersecretary of State Nuland's saying that the U.S. officials were pleased with the destruction of the pipeline, especially the Sweden's secretive investigation. Do you think the U.S. government's denial of involvement is credible?
I absolutely do, and I repeat it here. Anything else?
Let me follow up on that, if I might. Have you or anybody else at the State Department any communication with German, Norwegian ambassadors or other allies or officials on this matter?
On the matter of Nord Stream 2?
On the matter of the latest allegations, which give a fairly, I mean, it's one anonymous source. It is a fairly detailed, it would not be it would not be typical for us to engage allies and partners on something that is utter and complete nonsense and that should be rejected out of hand by anyone who is looking at it through through an objective lens. Yes, go ahead. One more aspect on this. One of the allegations that Hersh makes is that it was.
See, he really wants to get past this question.
CIA in order to prevent involvement, oversight as a covert operation. Did you read the piece?
I'm familiar with it.
One of his allegations is that it was taken off.
Rather than let this propaganda be aired in the briefing room.
Well, Ned Price admits that he didn't even read the piece there. So he doesn't even know what he's denouncing as propaganda, but now he's starting to kind of melt down.
Let me just say, it is a fundamental misunderstanding of oversight in our U.S. Congress. Beyond getting his facts entirely wrong, as he has before, and
now he's calling Seymour Hersh a discredited journalist because he upset the State Department before.
High-profile ways. It is a fundamental misunderstanding to suggest that our intelligence community is not subject to oversight. Anyone who writes that, who writes anything like that, should not be believed on any path that he
wrote that it was taken off of the CIA and put under military in order to prevent.
Our military is also subject to rigorous oversight.
That's my question. That's
yes.
my question.
The answer is yes.
Do you recognize and abide by the war powers clause in such a situation?
So this is some bullshit right here. This is some absolute dog shit. You know how dangerous that is? That's civilian infrastructure. And if you're the type of person that's saying, hey, man, Nord Stream 2, yeah, dude, we have to do it to protect our interest and do all this fucking shit. Well, then you're not thinking big terms. You're not thinking about the fucking nuclear possibilities of that. Because Putin, if I owned that fucking line, it was his second greatest achievement besides the Kerch Bridge. And we also blew up, or we don't know about. Allegedly. But, if he really is the madman that we claim he is, then they're flirting with our fucking life. And America also seems to have this thought that we could win a tactical nuclear war. They say that shit, though. And it's like, what?
They have acceptable losses, and I wonder what that number is.
Yeah.
How many million?
Great fucking point.
They have that number.
Yeah.
And they're ready to, they're willing to accept it.
Yeah, especially in our degrowth phase of our, whatever the fuck you want to call this.
We need to cut down by like 3 billion anyway.
Yeah.
Planet's overpopulated.
God damn. And really, it's not, because we have enough housing to fucking house everybody. We have enough food to feed everybody. It really isn't. They just want you to think that way so they don't have to come off fossil fuels, and they're going to fucking kill everybody. Look, we only have a homeless population of what, like 2 million or some shit like that? We have 20 million fucking empty houses in America, and half of them are owned by people that don't even live in America. Get the fuck out of America. is what I say. I say let's all be friends and kick them the fuck out. That's what I say. And start that shit again. And say, hey, let's be friends this time. Let's not let that shit happen again. Have some oversight committees and shit. But Nord Stream 2 is a dangerous situation, folks. And by the way, where are the fucking environmental groups? Isn't that methane fucking gas? Where's the environmental teams? You must have missed that bus. And then by the way Biden was talking about, oh, well, we'll handle that. The way the reporter, nothing you need to understand about that, except for the way the reporter said, what do you mean? How will you just stop that? What do you mean by stop the Nord Stream? That's what he meant. That's what he meant. And it's not a fucking Democrat or Republican thing, guys. That's a foreign policy deal. That's another big thing. That's why we're going to this rally. It has everybody. Everybody. Mike said it. I should have said it. It's the truth. It's the reason we're fucking going, man. It is absolutely people that disagree on a number of things coming together for the most important fucking thing that we all agree on it. What could be bigger than that? But remember when I told you guys that before Russia even invaded, which I was wrong about that though. I didn't think Russia was going to invade, but that's because I didn't know enough about the situation. I didn't know that Ukraine got overthrew their government. I didn't know that they had a fucking coup, and we were supporting that whole fucking thing, propping them up, and that's why we were sending them weapons. And by the way, if Trump was a Putin puppet, why did he put the kibosh on the weapons to Ukraine? You know, or why did he was the one that took Obama and started sending them over there. So if he was a Putin puppet, he wouldn't have fucking been sending the weapons over there. And oh no, that's not what it was. It was the Nord Stream. He shut down Nord Stream. He put the sanctions on it. So that's another thing. It's like, guys, that doesn't make any fucking sense. That he's a Putin puppet. It just doesn't. But we're gonna get to that in a second. All right, let's finish this shit up. I'm too high now. I'm fucking rambling, ain't I? I'm sorry.
You're good.
Am I okay? I don't like to be boring, man.
You get to wrap it up, B-box.
Yeah, I know that video was long as shit, but that video was worth it though. You had to listen to Little Tillman, man. Kevin's a beast, dude. If by some chance you catch his video, I love you, bro. Shit, bro. Whatever you need from me, man. I'm here for you. Yep. But America, another note from that video was really important. The one we just showed was America was making sure Germany and Russia didn't get too comfortable with each other. And that's important because that shows you the hegemony, how we're trying to dominate everybody. And that goes back to Kissinger. We don't have friends. We have interests. So even if we got to fucking blow up your pipeline and fuck Germany up and all their people. And by the way, we're fucking them up. Their industries are closing. They have major fucking industries that are closing now because of this gas line just fucking throwing everybody off. And people are fucked up as a result too. But who cares about working people, right? We don't count. So, but Seymour Hersh is the guy getting smeared for writing this article about Nord Stream that came through. And Seymour Hersh is like literally the Michael Jordan of fucking journalism. Anybody that will tell you that's not a propagandist will say, yeah, this guy, he gets smeared every time he writes something, and then it ends up being true. He wrote about Abu Ghraib. He wrote about the My Lai massacre. He wrote about with the war crimes. He got smeared for all these, but it's because he goes against the State Department. So because he goes against the State Department, he gets fucking the smear treatment. And is that the camera?
I don't know.
I don't think so. But as a result, yeah, he gets smeared, and that's the thing. You know, these guys are fucking literally grooming people. The good journalists don't last. And now he's on Substack. He can't even get on a fucking... He's one of the best journalists, and he's like undefeated. Everything he reports is fucking money, or it ends up eventually being money, but they never give him the props, and they fucking just scoot him to the side. And that's what you're seeing.
It's making him look bad.
So basically, So our thoughts aren't even our thoughts when you really think about it, man. They're shit that they're putting up there. Anyway, so yeah. Oh yeah, I got a list right here. Abu Ghraib, he revealed that originally Osama bin Laden killing by the Obama administration had a lot of holes in it, and he showed that and proved it. He covered the Syrian gas attacks, saying Syria did not gas its own people, and that was substantiated by the OPCW, the whistleblowers that came out, the 4 whistleblowers that came out of there that never were acknowledged, never came to the media. None of this shit gets reported, people, but it's real. It's fucking happening. It's documented. And then the Miley massacre, I said that. So Cy Hirsch is unpopular to the State Department because he tells too much truth. Acts of war. That's what that is with the fucking Nord Stream 2. It's a fucking act of war, dude. That is crazy.
What if Russia come over here and blew up our Alaskan pipeline?
Great fucking point. Or China.
Yeah. Anybody.
Yeah. Well, we'd shit our pants over a balloon. You think we'd fuck? What the fuck? Great fucking point, Mike. So, interesting notes. Covert actions don't need approval by Congress. And I think that's from, if I remember correctly, the Unitary Executive. And I learned that from Vice, the movie. the President Bush movie with Dick Cheney. It's a good movie, actually. Except for they make you like Dick Cheney, and I don't know how that's possible, but they do. You coming away from that shit feeling like, anyway, yeah, fucking, it's the Unitary Executive was explained in that movie while they were passing all this fucking laws to fucking sabotage Iraq and all that shit. But that's it for that. I just wanted to get that out there and let you guys know that Nord Stream 2 is something to pay attention to, and like, where do we go from here, man? Where the fuck we go from here? This is fucking crazy, dude. So, Russiagate. Here we go.
Stop the boat. I want to get off.
Yeah. Lastly, I just got to say this. We got to take another victory lap, Mike. Nothing to celebrate, though. But mainstream is not covering this either, folks. They're not covering this either. And it just got revealed. And I don't know if you know about Twitter files. If you don't know, let me catch you up real quick. Elon Musk, they say he leaked, but he didn't leak. He bought the fucking Twitter, so it's different than a leak. And he just gave a bunch of emails and everything, a laptop to a number of journalists and said, hey, man, I want you to open this up and tell me what you think. Go at it. And they did. And it is juicy to say the fucking... It is. I don't want to be disgusting, but I was going to use a dirty joke right there. But it's crazy. So the Twitter. So this particular part is about Russiagate. All right, and this is about Hamilton 68. It's among the amazing things that were on there. This is what they had. And what the fuck is Hamilton 68? A veteran of the Obama administration, Jonathan Morgan, is one of the developers of Hamilton 68. Funded by German Marshall Fund's Alliance for Securing Democracy, which is a neoliberal think tank, which is itself backed by NATO and USAID, which they're like National Endowment for Democracy and Bellingcat and all them motherfuckers. They're just arms of the CIA.
The latest drop in the Twitter files reveals some blatant dishonesty from high-ranking U.S. officials pushing the Russiagate narrative. So back when talk of Russian bots and trolls was all the buzz in American mainstream media, an organization called Hamilton 68 found its way into the headlines, tracking accounts they said were Russian fake accounts.
Russian bots went to work, seizing the opportunity to spread inflammatory messages on social media.
Russian election interference traces back to a so-called bot factory in St. Petersburg.
Except now we find out they weren't Russians at all. This is what Matt Taibbi reports after going through the Twitter emails released to him by Elon Musk.
There was an organization called Hamilton 68. Their secret sauce was a list of 600 accounts they said were linked to Russian influence. Well, in the Twitter files, we found the list. It's full of real Americans, and what they basically did is a fraud.
Hamilton 68 wasn't just some random internet blog. It was a project of the Alliance for Securing Democracy. On its board of advisors were many prominent people, including John Podesta, who served as President Obama's lawyer and the chair of Hillary Clinton's campaign. Mike McFowle, who served as the U.S. ambassador to Russia and on Obama's National Security Council prior to his ambassadorial position, was also on the ASD board, promoting the Hamilton 68 claim.
The explosion of violent, profane tweets from Russian trolls, as well as harsh reactions from some Russian government officials in my feed today are striking and new. A sign that Putin and his cronies are nervous? Your thoughts?
Here's John Podesta hacking the Hamilton 68 narrative, using it to try and delegitimize Trump's presidency.
The bottom line is Russia did interfere in our election. There were indictments forthcoming. They did try to help Donald Trump get elected president.
The Hamilton 68 claims were all over mainstream media. So many outlets repeated the allegations about Russia being responsible for right-wing voices on Twitter. But we now know this was not true, and there was no evidence to base it on. We have requested all the mainstream media outlets to comment on this. Since Twitter and other outlets have been known to label stories misleading or suppress certain news items like Hunter Biden's laptop, we wondered if now they would take action against the many places where the Hamilton 68 project was reported as accurate. No response to us yet from the mainstream press. Caleb Maupin, RT, New York.
The purpose of Hamilton 68 was to smear critiques of the Democratic Party and dismiss critiques as Russian bots. Remember what John Foster Dulles said about the portrayal of external menace? Mm-hmm. Here's the fucking example right here. That was a brother of a guy that started the CIA. The portrayal of external menace. You're seeing it. You got to remember these fucking things. These guys tell you right from their mouth. He was a lawyer. So he knows, you know what I mean? Anyways, Hamilton 68 was a digital dashboard claimed to track Russian influence. Roughly 650 accounts were mostly actual people. No bots, just fucking mostly Americans, actually. How you like them apples? The dashboard was it was a fraud. The dashboard was headed by the former FBI counterintelligence Clint Watts. Advisory council, this all came out in Twitter files. Former DHS chief Michael Chertoff, former acting CIA head Michael Morrell, former deputy NSA chief and Bill Kristol, John Podesta, a number of motherfuckers, dude. Big motherfuckers in here. It's amazing. It's McCarthyism all over again. It's what we said. How could you not? Anybody that knows the slightest thing about history should know that. Should just go, yeah, man, it's the same fucking thing. But here we go. Mainstream news outlets, including New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, PBS, NBC, CBS, ABC, MSNBC, did countless stories based on groups' alleged research. This group's alleged research cited Hamilton 68 as an authoritative source. Literally thousands of Russian bot stories, guys. They said Bernie's campaign, everything, the school shootings, fucking everything. Hashtag whatever the fuck. Russia. Wow. Maybe, just maybe they got us to co-sign the Ukraine war. Maybe that had a little bit to do with it. In 1985, before we end this segment, I just want to say this because I want this to fucking marinate. Because this is real. There was a set of documents released, American Historical Review, which pointed out the West and the State Department never believed that the Soviets were going to invade Western Europe. That was a myth that they consciously propagated, and they even listed reasons. One, they knew that Russian people did not want more war after fighting World War II. especially since they lost 27 million people, 13 million of which were civilians. 2, that war they fought against Hitler was a defensive war. 3, they had to rebuild their fucking country. Every factory, farm, village, city was fucking flattened. Wherever they went, they fucking destroyed it. And it was a lot. So all that red baiting, man. All that fucking red baiting. And it's still happening, and we're still soaking it up because the propaganda is better than ever. It's always been around, but it's better than ever. And
it's generational. It gets passed down too.
Yep.
In homes.
And they own it. And so therefore they own our narratives. They own how we think. I hope this finds you well, fellas. We all love each other. Love somebody. I just think get the fuck out of the TV, right?
Yeah.
The fuck out of the TV. That's what I learned today. The fuck out of the TV. It's everywhere.
Look at the world through your own eyes.
Yeah. And if I would have read off everything they own, it's in Netflix and everything. I mean, they literally have it in everything. It's a little bit of sprinkle of fucking, you'll notice it once you look for it. You'll go, oh, there it is. There it is. It could be a regular show of whatever the fuck. There it is. Neighbors or whatever it is. It's this funny show. It's about a black and white neighbor. I fucking love this show. I don't know if y'all watch it, but they had at the very, it was his neighbor was running for mayor or some shit. And he said, oh, I don't want a big government. The black dude said to him, I don't want the big government. And I was like, there it is. There it is. That's just a little sprinkle. That's what it is. And they'll just sprinkle that on. It's division tactics. The more you could fucking fire us up about bullshit, the less we'll ever put our heads together and love each other. They don't care about us loving each other, man. You know, that's the thing. That's they did, they don't. We don't love them.
It's like a prison has more prisoners than guards.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
They know how to keep us down.
Right. I mean, they literally said, you're going to own nothing and be happy. That's the bottom rung of the ladder, folks. You're going to own nothing and be happy. What if that's not true? Well, then it's too late because you don't own nothing and you ain't happy.
Too fucking late now.
Yeah, but we'll go for the ride. Y'all, thank you for tuning in. Yo, Mikey.
Thanks for having me.
Fucking love you, man. When you see us again.
Road trip.
Yeah, next time you see us, we're going to have some stories for you.
We'll be a little pastier because we're going up north for a bit.
That's it.
No sunshine.
It's going to be cold as fuck. Take care, everybody.